Between the 19th century and the early 20th, the Wild West took shape in people's imagination, where facts and legends crossed paths. The expansion across the United States brought stories that still inspire movies and TV shows today. Cowboys, gunslingers, and strange cases appear. A doctor who made boots and a briefcase out of an outlaw's skin. Another bandit who left poems inside safes. Subscribe to our channel and follow 25 surprising stories you may have never heard before. Number 1. George Big Nose Parrott, an outlaw of the Wild West, met an end as strange as his fame. In 1881, lynched by a mob, his body was handed over to Wyoming doctor and politician John Eugene Osborne. He had a pair of boots made from the criminal's skin and wore them when he took office as governor. Pieces of the skin were also turned into a briefcase. The skull, cut in half, became an ashtray, doorstop, and pencil holder in the hands of Lillian Held, the state's first female doctor. Osborne and his colleague Thomas Mackey also studied Parrott's brain in search of signs of criminal behavior. Nothing, however, was conclusive. Number 2. John Wesley Hardin became famous in the Wild West as a gunman who, in court, claimed to have killed 41 men. He spent more than 2 decades in prison and, once released, didn't last long. In 1895, he was shot in the back by John Selman in a saloon in El Paso. Years earlier, in 1877, in Abilene, after a night of gambling and drinking, he shared a hotel hallway with farmer Charles Huger. There, he woke up to snores coming from the room next door, demanded silence, got no response, and fired through the wall. Huger died without ever waking up. Number 3. On the banks of Clear Creek, where it meets the Brazos, Fort Griffin emerged, a spot on the map that became a crossroads of the Wild West. There, trail cowboys, buffalo hunters, gunmen settling scores, gamblers, outlaws, and women who kept the nightlife going all crossed paths. The mix earned it the nickname Babylon on the Brazos. Through its dusty streets walked John Wesley Hardin, Doc Holliday, and Kate, the big-nosed woman. Fort Griffin embodied the edge where the frontier made its own rules. There, any night could change a destiny, and the next day began as if nothing had ever been agreed upon. Number 4. Known as Black Bart, the poet, Charles Bowles was an unusual outlaw of the Wild West. He was born in England and arrived in New York with his family in 1831. During the gold rush of 1849, he headed to California and, far from the mines, set his sights on Wells Fargo stagecoaches. Elegant and calm, he had a habit that would make him a legend. After cracking open safes, he would leave verses as his signature. He carried out 28 robberies, was arrested, served his sentence, and ended his career. Back in New York, he lived quietly until his death in 1917. His courtesy unsettled both victims and agents, a rare contrast on the frontier. That's how the myth grew, as much from the rhymed notes as from the boldness. Number 5. In the Wild West, whiskey was worth more than just a sip. It was a ritual. Called firewater, it earned fame in demonstrations that left native peoples astonished. Traders would pour the drink into flames to prove its alcohol content. The recipe, far from orthodox, mixed burnt sugar, chewing tobacco, and raw alcohol. The result was a harsh, powerful liquid, strong enough to silence any boast. One shot was enough to bring even a seasoned gunslinger to his knees and seal the reputation of the most feared drink in the entire West. Number 6. In 1911, bank and train robber Elmer J. McCurdy was killed in a shootout with the police in Oklahoma. With no family in sight, his body ended up at the funeral home of Joseph L. Johnson. The businessman saw an opportunity. He embalmed the corpse, dressed him like a bandit, propped a rifle in his arms, and started charging a penny to anyone who wanted to take a look. Sometime later, 2 supposed brothers showed up and took the body. They weren't relatives. They were owners of a traveling show. Elmer became a carnival attraction, toured the country, was abandoned in a warehouse in Los Angeles, rediscovered in 1949, and only 27 years later was finally buried under a slab of concrete to discourage future curiosity seekers. Number 7. Jesse James became famous as the face of crime in the Wild West, but many point to his older brother Frank as the more ruthless one. Together, they led the feared James Younger gang, behind robberies that left bank employees and civilians dead. In 1882, after Jesse was murdered, Frank decided to end life on the run. He surrendered to the governor of Missouri and admitted he had lived in the saddle, saying he had never known a day of perfect peace. Acquitted in court, he spent 3 decades doing regular jobs until his death in 1915. Number 8. James Killer Miller, known as Deacon Jim, roamed the Wild West with a reputation as a cold-blooded gunman. Official records credit him with 14 killings. Accounts from the time raise the total to 50 and suggest he may have been the one who shot Pat Garrett, the famous manhunter of Billy the Kid. He was an intriguing figure. He didn't drink or smoke, attended the Methodist Church and helped with services, all while selling his skills as a hired killer. The legend of his invulnerability came from a trick. Under his coat, a steel plate stopped 4 bullets to the chest. His run ended in 1909, when a mob hanged him. The killer deacon remained a symbol of the contradictions that shaped the West. Between prayer and gunpowder, he built his own legend. Number 9. In 1870, a traveler stopped at a rest spot between Elizabethtown and Taos in New Mexico. The place, rustic and isolated, belonged to Charles Kennedy, a burly bearded man, and his wife Rose, a Ute woman. The couple's 5-year-old son, noticing the visitor, whispered a warning. His father was a murderer and planned to kill him. Soon the suspicion became fact. Kennedy shot the traveler, and to silence the revelation, killed his own son. After that, he repeated the pattern. Those who passed through his cabin rarely left alive. He took their belongings and added to the death toll of the Wild West. The road went on, and every stop there ended in loss. Number 10. At the end of the 19th century, one family drew attention in Kansas, the Benders. John, Elvira, Katie, and John Jr. ran a small roadside inn. As travelers began to disappear, uneasiness grew in the area. With no proof, rumors spread about rituals. A community search was then organized. When they entered the cellar, they found graves and bodies, tying the house to the killings. The news spread, and the Benders were hunted down and killed. Katie would later die, trapped in a fire. The episode was etched into the memory of the Wild West as a portrait of the hidden danger beneath the routine of an inn, where hospitality served as bait for crime. Number 11. In the saloons of the Wild West, card players usually chose the chair against the wall. That way they could watch the door and lower the risk of ambush. In 1876, in Deadwood, South Dakota, James Butler Hickok, the famous Wild Bill, kept that habit at the Nutella and Mance Saloon. He sat facing the main entrance and continued the game with apparent calm. What he didn't foresee was Jack McCall slipping quietly through the back door. One shot to the back silenced the table and ended the gunslinger's run. The scene became a lesson. Posture protects, but it doesn't shield those who ignore the exits. Number 12. Mary Catherine Harani, nicknamed Big Nose Kate for her striking nose, lived a life full of sudden changes. She grew up in comfort, lost her parents early, and ended up in a foster home. Later, as a widow, she moved to Texas. She danced in saloons and sold companionship to survive. There she crossed paths with Doc Holliday, a gambler and gunman who would later ride with Wyatt Earp at the OK Corral. She became his lover and accomplice. When he landed in jail, Kate set up a way out. She set fire to a shed to stir up the town and, in the chaos, cleared a path for him, saving him from a harsher sentence. The bold move came at a price, but it etched her name into the Wild West. Number 13. In the Wild West, the bandana wasn't just an accessory. It was part of the basic kit, alongside the hat, the gun, and the horse. It was a tool for the whole day. On cattle drives, it covered the mouth and nose against dust. Under the hot sun, it protected the neck. At camp, it worked as a grip to handle a hot pan. When the cold hit, It shielded the ears. And then there was the sneaky use. A quick adjustment turned the cloth into a mask, hiding anyone who needed to act without being recognized in bank or stagecoach robberies. That's how the bandana became a symbol of utility and survival in a West of harsh rules. In tough moments, it could still serve to improvise bandages, tie down loads, or signal a partner from a distance. Number 14. Alice Ivers arrived in the United States in 1865, bringing her family and few certainties from England. She left boarding school for girls and, in search of new paths, settled in Colorado. Among smoky saloons and noisy tables, she learned poker and began her career in Creed, at the saloon of Bob Ford, the man who killed Jesse James. Skilled with the cards and with a captivating presence, she became Poker Alice. She used her charm as bait, confused rivals, and drew crowds. Her fame exploded when she won $6,000 in a single night, a fortune for the time. In 1910, however, a confrontation in her own saloon ended with the death of a soldier. Arrested, she saw the legend give way to the bitter ending of a life marked by risk and spectacle. Number 15. Pearl Hart was born in Canada, and after seeing a Buffalo Bill show, became captivated by the myth of the Wild West. At 17, she left her family and headed to Arizona, where her path took an unlikely turn. She married Joe Wood, and little by little the two went from chasing dreams to committing crimes. In 1899, they robbed a stagecoach. The plan fell apart, and their escape turned into aimless wandering in the desert. They were caught, and Pearl became a newspaper sensation, the second woman to rob a mail coach, the first to come out alive. Convicted, she spent only 18 months behind bars, released because the prison didn't even have a women's ward. Her short sentence cemented the legend and fueled the popular fascination with outlaws in skirts. Number 16. Riding more than 3,150 kilometers to deliver messages was the mission of the Pony Express, a feat that still commands respect today. About 160 years ago, this service sped up communication and made the journey in around 10 days. Between 1860 and 1861, it connected Missouri to Sacramento, carrying letters and newspapers with a timed system. Every 12 miles, a new horse, a new rider. The performance was remarkable, but the experience lasted only 18 months. Even though it crossed from the Midwest to the West quickly, investors racked up losses of $110,000. Mail service continued by stagecoach, and the Pony Express became a brief, yet unforgettable episode in the history of communications in the United States. Its legacy, however, was proving that logistics, planning, and courage could shrink continental distances. Number 17. Using camels in the U.S. Army sounds strange today, but in 1856 it seemed like a logical solution. Inspired by mounted forces in Asia and Africa, the government decided to test them in the deserts of the West and South. 66 animals came from the Middle East and were stationed at Camp Verde, Texas. At first, they impressed. They marched long distances with little water while carrying heavy loads. Soon, though, problems showed up. They obeyed poorly, annoyed the troops with grumbling and spitting, and didn't fit into military routines. With the Civil War, the project lost support. After the conflict, the unit was dissolved. The camels ended up sold to circuses or released onto the plains. The lesson remained. Sometimes an idea looks perfect on the map, but stumbles on the ground in practice. Number 18. Along the American frontier, scalping emerged as a mark of victory associated with Apache groups. The practice, used to prove courage and skill in combat, traveled as both a trophy and a message. With colonial expansion, white settlers adopted it, turning it into a tool of fear and control. In the 19th century, the country at war revived this custom. Confederate guerrillas under William Bloody Bill Anderson became notorious for their brutal attacks, in which ritualized killing served as both a warning and war propaganda. Number 19. Called St. Elmo's Fire, the glow appears when the air is ionized by intense electric fields. In the middle of storms, it shows up as a pale light that for centuries appeared on ship masts and was taken as a good omen by sailors. Far from the sea, the story changes. In the Wild West, rare discharges made the glow settle on cattle horns and even on horses' ears. The effect gave the animals an almost ghostly look, enough to send chills down the spines of tough cowboys and outlaws. On those nights, no one dared to challenge the sky. Number 20. In the movies, the Wild West looks like it was populated by white cowboys. In reality, the picture was different. About 1 in every 4 cowboys was black and handled the daily work of the ranches. They drove cattle herds, branded and marked livestock, broke horses, and took on rodeos. During the Civil War, landowners went to the front lines and left farms under the command of enslaved people, who managed herds and routines. With peace and abolition, many continued in the trade, now paid, seeking livelihood and autonomy. Recognizing their presence changes the focus. Without them, the history of the West is incomplete. With them, it takes on its true shape. Retelling this story corrects the myth and restores the place of those who rode the trails and kept the West's economy alive in the fields. Number 21. In the Old West, bounty hunters only got paid after bringing the wanted man to the authorities, like you see in so many westerns with Clint Eastwood. That meant traveling miles with a corpse in tow, a tough, smelly, and risky job. With the spread of photography, the rule gave way to visual proof. Instead of a formal handover, the picture was enough. Hunters would take the dead man to a studio where the photographer captured his face, validating payment under local law. To avoid disputes, the body was propped up against the wall and photographed before collapsing. Number 22. In the days of the Wild West, saloons were the heart of social life and gambling, but every swinging door also opened the way to risk. Gunmen and travelers crowded the bar, and small provocations could turn into fights and gunfire. On screen, they were shown with pianos and chandeliers. In reality, they often started out as flimsy tents barely standing in the dust. Among the famous names, the Long Branch Saloon in Kansas City became a curiosity and attraction. The original burned down in 1895 and was later rebuilt, keeping its legend alive in the imagination of the West. Even so, they were places of business and news, where strangers drank and struck quick deals. Number 23. Tatanka Iotanka, remembered as Sitting Bull, emerged in the 19th century as a strong voice for his people. Known for his bravery, he also chose to negotiate, trying to contain the violence surrounding the plains. His bond with the land and animals sustained his authority and guided his decisions. After years of clashes with the armies of the United States and Canada, he surrendered and was taken to a reservation. There, he briefly agreed to take part in Buffalo Bill's show, riding on horseback across North America and Europe. He soon gave it up. He didn't see himself in that role, nor in the daily life imposed by whites, and reclaimed his own dignity. Number 24. In the Wild West, women were the exception in territories shaped by cowboys, gunmen, and hunters. In towns and settlements, there were 3 men for every woman. In California, the gap grew to 9-1. To attract customers to saloons, owners recruited women who sang, danced, and chatted, keeping the drinks flowing and the cash registers full. The stigma followed these roles, but the reality was more diverse. Many were not prostitutes, maintained their independence, and in several places were treated with respect. Between music and noise, they negotiated boundaries, earned commissions on drinks, and kept the business lively until late into the night. Number 25, Geronimo, Apache leader, became known for his determination to resist the occupation by the United States and Mexico. Born in Sonora, he moved as a young man to a village in what is now New Mexico. There, he dedicated his life to preventing his people from being pushed onto reservations, fighting against the armies and interests of both countries. The struggle didn't bring victory. At the end of his life, he converted to Christianity and made a living selling bows, arrows, and photos with his signature. His story reflects both resistance and forced adaptation. Do you like the Wild West? Share your memory, suggest a movie, and pass this video along to someone who enjoys the subject.